In this video in the Crochet for Knitters series, I'm going to show you how to make this blanket. It's pretty easy to work. It's a traditional pattern commonly called the granny ripple. And I have reworked the pattern a little bit to be especially friendly to new crocheters and knitters. And if you'd like your free copy of the pattern to follow along with this tutorial, I'll give you a link here on screen and in the video description below, which will take you to my website where you can get the pattern. This pattern is a shining example of why it's a good idea for knitters to have a few crochet stitches under their belt. If you have a deadline, if you need a gift finished by a deadline, it is so much faster to crochet a baby blanket than to knit one. And this is really pretty easy to work. All you need to know how to do is chain stitch and double crochet. And if you aren't super confident with those stitches, I'll give you links on screen to take you to a really slow demonstration of the stitches you need to work this. Now, because this is a traditional blanket, there are a lot of examples of finished blankets on Ravelry. And so if you want to change things up from the instructions that I give and make a blanket that's bigger or in a different gauge, you can go to Ravelry and look at the finished projects there and get an idea of the amount of yarn you're going to need for the size you want to knit, etc. And you can use that as a guideline when you go to buy yarn. Of course, I'll give you all the details of what I did in this blanket to get, it's a baby blanket width, and I ended up using all of my yarn, so it's a little bit longer. My size ends up being about a throw size. I think that's all we need. Next up, we're going to get started with the foundation row, which is arguably the most difficult row of the pattern. Okay, if you have your hook and your yarn and your free pattern, we're ready to get started on the foundation row. There's one cool thing about this blanket I forgot to mention in the introduction, and that is that it looks like a granny square blanket, and it's pretty easy to work up because you're stabbing your hook into gaps instead of into stitches, which is pretty quick, like the granny square blanket. And I have a pattern for the granny square blanket, and I'll give you a link to that in the video description below. But the way this is different from a granny square blanket is that when you're finished, you're finished. There's no seaming anything together. Granny squares, you know, typically you end up with something like this and you have to seam them all together to make a blanket. This is just worked in rows, and the only thing you have to do is weave in ends when you're finished. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. And I left this here like this because I saw this on the monitor and I thought it looked pretty. It's only so you can see how all the colors look so nice together. Okay, but that's not what we're going to look at for the tutorial. This is a much bigger example here of the pattern, and you see everything's worked in clusters of double crochets. And to work this, you really only need to know how to do the chain stitch and the double crochet stitch. But if you aren't really confident with those, I'll be sure to give you links to videos that go over those stitches very slowly. But I'm going to assume in this video that you are pretty comfortable doing those stitches. In this example and in my big blanket, I have changed color every 2 rows for this effect. Okay, let's get started on the foundation row. First thing you're going to do is chain a multiple, I think it's of 18 plus 6. You can make this any width you want. 18 plus 6, yes. And you can make this any width you want, knowing that you need a multiple of 18 plus 6. And for this little sample, I'm going to chain 42. I already have 30. Okay, again, if you need a slower review of the chain stitch, I'll give you a link right here. Okay, so we have our chain stitch, which is, it looks like a bind-off row, a series of V's, and we are going to work into the top leg of the V, this one here, as we work across the foundation row. Now the foundation row is the only row that you really have to count and keep really close track of, because we're setting up the rest of the pattern from here. And it's also the only row where we actually have to stab into a stitch instead of into a gap. So it's slower than the other rows. But to get started, the first instruction of the foundation row is to put 3 double crochets into the 6th chain from the hook. So each V is a stitch, and we're not going to count what's on the hook. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to put double crochets into that stitch right there. So to work a double crochet, I yarn over, I stab into the stitch, grab the yarn and pull up a loop, grab the yarn and pull through 2, grab the yarn and pull through 2. And I'll give you a link right here to a much slower demonstration of the double crochet stitch if you need help with that. So I have 1 stitch there in that double crochet, 1 double crochet there in that stitch. I'm going to work 2 more in this exact same stitch. Okay, there's my first cluster of 3 double crochets. I'm finished with that. Now the next bit of instructions tell me to skip 2, 1, 2, and put 3 double crochets in the next stitch. The pattern actually tells me to do that twice. So I'll skip 2 and put 3 double crochets in the next stitch. Okay, there's the first part. We have 3 clusters finished. Now we're going to set up what is the bottom of the ripple. Okay? And to do that, I'm going to skip 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to put 3 double crochets into the next one. This is all about 3 double crochets, 3 double crochets. And those 5 that we skipped make the bottom of the ripple. Okay, now I'm going to skip 2 and put another cluster of 3 in the next one. Now we're going to work the top of the ripple. The way that we skipped stitches here to create the bottom of the ripple, we're going to work 2 clusters of 3 double crochets to create the top of the ripple. So I'll skip 2, and in this next stitch I'm going to put 1 cluster of 3 double crochets. And then I'm going to chain 3. Just like we did with the foundation row, and then put another cluster. Okay, that is the finish of the pattern repeat right there. We started here, we went down and did the bottom of the ripple, we went up and we did the top of the ripple. Now we're going to go down again. So I'll skip 2, 1 cluster, skip 2, 1 cluster. This is on our way down to the bottom of the ripple. Now I'm going to skip 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And into the 6th stitch, I'll put a cluster. Skip 2, another cluster. And then skip 2, and in the last stitch of the row, I'm going to treat it like the top of, it is a top of a ripple. I'm going to do 2 clusters. Well, I'm going to do 1 cluster, chain 3, and then do a second one. Whoops. Now at the end of the row, no stitches left, I'm going to chain 5 to turn the work. I turn the work and now everything changes. I'm past the dreadful foundation row And now I can just work into these gaps between the 3 double crochets. If you've worked granny squares, this is totally familiar. And I'm also going to continue with the same color, because I'm going to work 2 rows in each color. It's entirely up to you. You can change colors here if you like. But so in this first chain 3 gap, I'm going to work 1 double crochet. I mean 1 double crochet cluster of 3. Okay, then I go to the next gap between 2 clusters, which is right here, and I work 1 here. It goes so much faster after the foundation row. I do the same thing again between the next 2, another cluster. And now that we have the foundation row set up, it's easy to see where the top and bottom of the ripples are. And so after a couple rows, you won't need to follow the pattern anymore, because this is clearly the bottom of the ripple, because I can see my chain 5 down, or my skip 5 down here. I'm going to skip that again between these 2 clusters and start to go back up to the top ripple, the top of the ripple, with a cluster here, a cluster between the next 2, and then at the top of the ripple, we have that chain 3. In that chain 3, we're going to do exactly what we did in the last row. We're going to do a cluster, chain 3, and a cluster, and that will keep the top of the ripple consistent throughout the blanket. And again, this is all clearly written out in the pattern. Chain 3 and 1 more cluster. I'm thinking ahead, not thinking about what my hook is doing, but I got it. So you'd finish this, just as we've done here, you'd finish the rest of your row. And next up, we're going to talk about changing colors. It is entirely up to you how many different colors you want to use for this blanket. If you want to make it in 1 solid color, or change color after every 2 rows, or use it even, you can use this pattern very easily as a scrap blanket, just using up the same weight of yarn that you have left over from other projects. The instructions that I'm giving you for what I made changes colors every 2 rows. And I like that because I just like the way the pattern looks together with the 2 rows of the granny ripple. I also like having all of my ends that I need to weave in on the same side of the work. It doesn't really make any difference. It's just a personal preference of mine. I'm going to show you how I change colors. There are a lot of different ways of doing this. I think one of the most popular ways of doing this is to hold the old color and the new color together for the first few stitches. That works well for a lot of people. I don't trust that. I do kind of an extra secure way, because the blanket that I made is a machine washable blanket that I intend to give to a baby, well, baby's parents probably, and they're going to want to machine wash it. So I want all of the ends super secure. So the first part of really making those ends secure is in the color change, and then the last segment of this video I'll show you how to double secure those ends so that they are machine washable and dryable. The yarn that I used is machine washable and dryable, so I expect that it will be treated that way, and so that's why I super secure all of the ends. Okay, I'll be quiet. I'm going to show you how to add a different color. Let's go ahead and take a look. This here is 2 rows finished. I went down and back, and I want to change color now. And I have this little clip here just to hold my loop. I'm going to change to this blue, and this is what I do every time I change color. I find it works really well. At the end of the row, when I'm ready to turn, the next bit of instructions tell me to chain 5. So I'm going to work the color change right into the chain 5. I take my new color of yarn and I fold it over, leaving about a 6-inch tail to weave in. I put that on the hook. I've already broken this yarn, if I didn't mention that. And I pull that through. Then I slide that loop to the biggest part of the hook, it helps to have a table or lap in front of you for this. So the new stitch is on the biggest part of the hook. And the reason I want it like that is because I don't want the stitch to disappear into nothingness when I do this next part. I tie the two short ends together in a double knot, and I really, really tighten it up. Okay, so with that action, that was actually a chain 1, pulling that new color through the old color. So I just need to chain 4 more. And I'm ready to go. And so here I am in my first chain 3 gap. I'll put 1 cluster in here. And then move along with 1 cluster between the next 2, skipping the next one for the bottom of the ripple, 1 cluster in the next 2, and then cluster, chain 3, cluster for the top of the ripple. That's really the meat of the blanket. You're going to keep going, changing colors if you choose, and just working into those gaps, skipping the bottom of the ripple, working a double one with a chain 3 in the top of the ripple for as long as you like, as many years as you like. The blanket can be any size. Next up, I'm going to show you a little trick to make the 2 ends of the blanket look really good when you're finished. I'm going to show you a little trick for the finishing off the blanket at the foundation row and the last row of the blanket. I might as well show you. I think it's easier than explaining it. Let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, this is my foundation row, and this is the last row of the blanket that I did. You'll see that, and you probably noticed this while you were working on it, it's hard to see the space between the clusters because working a row into the previous row is what opens up the spaces between the clusters. And the foundation row, this actually looks pretty good. On the big blanket that I did, this was really kind of smashed together and not opened up at all. So we're going to fix that. And so whatever color you use for the foundation chain and the first 2 rows, save some more of that yarn because you're going to need it for this one more thing. And in this, what I'm going to do is work a single crochet row through what was the foundation row to open up those stitches and make it look like the rest of the blanket. So if you need a review of the single crochet stitch, I'll give you a link right here. So I am going to attach the yarn. All I'm doing is pulling up a loop and then pulling that through. And I'm going to work a single crochet stitch by grabbing the yarn and pulling it through 2. And I'm going to start by putting 3 into that gap right there. This is essentially just the same row that we did before through the rest of the blanket, but using single crochet stitches and no chaining at the what is now the top of the ripple, which was the bottom of the ripple if the blanket's upside down. So I'm going to work another cluster of 3 single crochets and another one. It is hard to work single crochets after working 8 million double crochets. It's hard not to yarn over. Okay, now we're at this top of the ripple. I'm going to single crochet 2 clusters with no chain 3 between. Okay, that's the pattern repeat. And you take a look and you'll see that this row is much more opened up and looking like the other rows because of this little bit of finishing that I've done. And you'll do the same thing to the last row. You'll want to save some of this color of yarn to do an edging of the single crochet in pattern, and this is all written out in the pattern for you, of course. Next up, I'm going to show you how to do the super secure end fastening that I like to do when I make a machine washable blanket. The last step of this blanket, and really any project, is weaving in the ends when you're finished, and I'm going to show you my super secure way of getting the ends tied down so that the blanket will last through machine washing and drying. Let's go ahead and take a look. Look at all these ends I have to weave in, and I only have this tiny sample. So to get started, I'm going to need my tapestry needle, and I'm going to thread one of those ends onto the tapestry needle. Now really the first part of this, I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm just going to get the end away from the edge. I don't really want any knots or anything close to the edge because that could show. Also, I'm going to double check this double knot that I tied with the new color and really wrench on that. Just shy of breaking the yarn. Okay, so that knot is really tight. I'm going to take this end, nothing fancy, I'm just going to get it away from the edge into the middle of one of the clusters. Okay, that looks fine. I'm going to untwist the plies, and I'm going to separate the plies half and half. And this happens to be a 3-ply yarn, so it's going to be 2 and 1. I'm going to thread a couple of those plies onto the tapestry needle, and then take it just a half a stitch away. I say half a stitch, it's really just any loop. Just get it so that the two ends are not coming out of the same place, which will allow you to tie them together. And watch the tension on this, but you can pull that pretty tight, and then on the second half of the knot, you can really pull it tightly. Now I happen to be using a wool yarn here that's going to break a lot easier than a cotton yarn. So I'm being really careful, but I am wrenching on this. Okay, that's pretty tight. It's really tight. Now I can cut this super short. And look, it's invisible and it is so secure. And then for this next one, I'll do the same thing. I'll just show you. Because I'll be doing the same thing over and over. I'm going to just carry this end up this chain just by wrapping it kind of as I go. And really, again, it's nothing fancy. You'll find the way that you like to do it. Then after I pull it through and I've got it in that cluster, I'm going to straighten out that chain because I did pull it kind of tightly, and then do the exact same thing with this end here in this 3 double crochet cluster. And that's it. I think I've shown you everything you need to know to make the Granny Ripple blanket. Good luck. The last step of the blanket or any project is weaving in the ends. I'm going to show you my super secure way. And I keep talking, I just spit. Can I start over?
Yeah.